Revenge of the Ninja is one of the strangest movies I've ever seen. On the one hand, it's a stupid, badly scripted adolescent fantasy. It's full of plot holes, bad acting, physical implausibility, and dreadful continuity errors. But on the other hand, it's brutally violent, has an overall feeling of urgency and tension, has an excellent and unique musical score, and at times it's incredibly imaginative in terms of fight choreography. For me, it's both a terrible and brilliant film at the same time, laughable and engaging. I know I'm not the only one who holds this dual view of the movie because it's become something of a cult classic, and most people who remember the old 80s ninja movies tend to cite Revenge of the Ninja as the best of the bunch. If you've not seen Revenge of the Ninja, then I strongly recommend you go buy a DVD or Blu-ray copy because this movie is wildly imaginative. It has several fight scenes ranging from embarrassingly stupid to grippingly tense. And for this study, I've chosen the fight between the lead character, Cho, and four bad guys led by a Native American who facially just looks like a regular Caucasian guy. The plot justifications for this fight are straightforward, but also they're a thinly veiled cover for the psychological appeals of the scene. Cho is a ninja who had to leave Japan because most of his family was slaughtered by a rival ninja clan. He set up a Japanese doll gallery in America. Unknown to him, the guy who helped set up the gallery is an international drug dealer who wants to smuggle heroin packed inside the dolls. A rival drug lord sends Tonto and his boys to steal the dolls and thus steal the heroin. Cho, not realising the drug smuggling element, interrupts the burglars and they engage in a crazy fight starting in an alley, which then goes on for about 5 minutes, during which it turns into a fight on and in a moving vehicle, and then into an all-out street brawl to the death. The action is in places cartoonishly stupid, but it's also ferociously tense. I've watched this scene with quite a few people since I first saw the movie in my teens, and this scene always had an impact. I've watched first-time viewers alternating back and forth between outright laughter and wide-eyed shock during this scene. So I'm going to take you through the whole scene step by step and try to break the whole thing down in terms of its good versus terrible elements, because it's actually quite complex in terms of its appeals. But before starting the breakdown, I must mention some more things about the context of the scene. First, Revenge of the Ninja was shot in a very chaotic way. It was produced under the Cannon Films brand by those wild guys of film production, Golan and Globus. They produced their movies with lightning speed, often sacrificing on quality in the process, but they had a ballsy approach of just throwing in any idea that seemed cool, even if it was narratively silly. From the reports I've come across, these producers would sometimes make momentary demands for plot and scene changes, apparently even rush scripting the new scenes themselves on the set. This would create gaping plot holes, but at the same time the spontaneous approach often resulted in moments of excellence and originality, and given the plethora of continuity errors in this action scene, such as guys suddenly disappearing from the fight entirely for several seconds and then coming back in, I think a lot of choreographical decisions were made on the fly. And that's the trade-off for spontaneous filmmaking. Logical plausibility is sacrificed for emotional and aesthetic highs. Second, there are two other scenes in the movie that relate to this scene in a more basic way. Cho's son is bullied by 5 kids, in which he fights and beats them. It's the Karate Kid for 5-year-olds, but it has some basic parallels with Cho's fight against the burglars. A gang of thugs versus one guy. These kids are bigger than the protagonist of the fight, and the Indian guy and his fat buddy here are bigger than Cho. Both scenes have a thug with a red band around his head. I'm not sure why red headbands were so popular in 80s action films. The kid fight is started by the bully stealing something, in this case a mere cap, which compares with Cho's dolls being stolen. So there's an overall school kid versus the bully's undertone to the burglary fight scene as well. The other related scene follows the same child defeating the big bully's logic. In fact, this time it involves adults fighting in a kid's playground. Again, there's a big bad guy, and the enemies here are comically cartoonish. Since when do bikers, rappers, cowboys and Japanese guys hang out together? Such a scene made today would come off as multicultural propaganda. Oh, and all the bad guys have moustaches here. I guess that unites them because there's nothing else in their dress code that's consistent. And this scene was definitely made up on the fly. The choreography and continuity is awful, and the scene wasn't needed at all as part of the overall story, but it does thematically overlap with the burglary fight in terms of bullied kid versus big bully's logic. Right, so here goes with the breakdown of the main scene. We start with this shot of the Indian guy about to steal one of the Japanese dolls, which just happens to be a ninja, unsheathing his sword to do battle. The two are framed together for a moment before the theft commences. So right off the bat here we have a clash of cultures and traditions. Native Americans, like ancient ninjas, prided themselves on their hunting and fighting ability and used a variety of tailor-made weapons. I don't think there's ever been another movie that has a Native American versus a ninja. And this Indian guy will use traditional Native American weapons as the fight scene progresses. He's the leader of the thugs, and his buddies just seem to represent mindless Western thuggery. So this theft at the symbolic level is a cultural attack on Cho by two rival cultures, Caucasian and Native Americans ironically working together, similar to the multicultural thugs in the playground fight. The cultural insult element is present in that when Cho enters, he sees evidence of violent carnage, smashed glass and boxes thrown about, even though the burglars had no need to do this. The vandalism here is equivalent to insulting graffiti. Another notable detail here is that all of the dolls in this shot are lit from light panels beneath them, but not the ninja. A ninja lives a secretive life in the shadows, so appropriately no floor light, and hence the blue light representing moonlight. When Cho enters the room, there's a little statue of an angry-faced Oriental guy looking upon the aftermath of the burglary. And Oriental, yeah, I know in America sometimes that's considered to be offensive. Here in Britain, it's not. That's just a normal way of describing those people, because the term Asian over here means people from the Middle East. Anyway, this Oriental guy, he's out of focus but still prominent in the frame, and when we cut to Cho's point of view, the same statue is still present in the opposite corner of the screen. Interesting that this statue hasn't been stolen, broken or knocked over. I suspect it's been placed in these two shots to represent Cho's cultural anger and offence at having objects of traditional symbolic value stolen. Oh, something else here that's hilarious, and I have to mention it as it's bound to be brought up in the comments section. The bird symbol on the wall in yellow looks like a big naked arse. Cho has one on his car as well, as surely that would draw insults in the street. Anyway, Cho runs out back and finds the burglars storing the last of the doll boxes in the van. Now, a lot of martial arts action scenes will have the fight stop from time to time, so that the fighting parties can stare at each other dramatically for a few moments, and maybe even exchange a verbal insult or two. Not so in this scene. We get this one shot of Cho looking angry, and then it's non-stop fighting and chasing until the end of the scene. Now, actor Sho Kosugi may not have had any special acting ability, but he did have a very cinematic face. He's got a great stare, and his eyes were perfect for those ninja costume moments. So his anger here is established, but with a continuity error. He's in the doorway, but the close-up has him wide out in the open. But it's such a brief shot, no one would notice the error. So Cho runs out in the open for what starts off as a very bog-standard, low-budget action sequence, but which ramps up a minute or two later when the fight moves out of this alley location. And that's where things get more interesting, so bear with me while I get this mostly boring part out the way. Here his ninja senses abandon him completely because he doesn't even notice the burglar on his left. In this respect he's similar to Superman, whose powers and perceptual abilities tend to increase or decrease from one situation to the next, depending on the dramatic requirements of the scene. The guy hits him with a garbage bag full of empty soda cans, and from his response you'd think he was hit with a plank of wood. Dramatically though, it's okay because of the trash flying out the bag and the noise that the cans make. So it's, kind of stimulating both in terms of visuals and sound. But again, there's a kind of cultural insult framing. A dirty backstreet location, and being thrown in the garbage or having garbage thrown at you is almost like an insult about economic status, or social status. The two guys grab Cho, and instead of actually beating him up, they pull his hair and shout at him. The guy in the denim in the back is simply cheering the other two on like a dumb ape. And this all comes off like a school bully situation. Actually, Cho in this scene and his son earlier, they wear sweaters during their fights. That's unusual because a martial arts protagonist will usually have some muscle showing during a fight scene, but here it's like Cho is dressed to be the bog standard average guy in the street. It's a curious contrast against the fighting powers that he displays during the fight, and actually it fits with the double identity of ninjas not publicly revealing their assassin identity in daily life. Cho starts fighting back and the choreography is nothing special at all, but what is good here is the sound effects of the punches and kicks. They're of a higher quality throughout this scene than in most martial arts movies. Still unrealistic, but better than usual. And the quality of sound effects is good through pretty much the entire scene. The fat guy takes a kick in the balls and immediately comes back in like he didn't really feel it. That's standard unrealism for martial arts scenes, and there's plenty more of that to come in this scene. And one of the worst ones is right here. A neck-breaking crunch, but the same guy just gets right back into the fight a moment later. Denim Guy takes multiple digs and a fairly good stunt of throwing himself back against the steps. That's more dangerous than it looks from this angle. Actually, the high angles thing helps give the scene a little bit of visual dynamism, and though the choreography is bland so far, the music is fairly good. The making things up while shooting things starts to really show now. This guy gets his head bashed on the stairs, and then he and the Denim Guy just disappear. Very poor choreography of this guy, who's obviously not trying to actually hit Cho, and for some reason Indian Guy is up on the roof holding an empty crate. Comedy slow motion jump and head smash with the crate, that's got a hit. Hunting blade to the throat, but done as a threat rather than an actual attempt to cut his throat, or it's just another moment of bad choreography. Fight choreography is slightly better now with Sho Kosugi, who is a real martial artist, actually doing some stuff here that looks like real martial arts moves. But the Indian guy tries to stab him in the groin or the arse, either one would be awful. Cho stops him just about, but that vicious attempt to stab him there conveys a level of sadistic danger that ramps up the tension a little bit compared to the clumsy fighting with the other guys. It fits well because Native American warriors are historically known for their sheer brutality, torturing victims and scalping them and so on. Actually, that very danger was brought up in the precursor to this fight.
If anybody gets in your way, scalp them, right?
All the other guys have disappeared from this fight while Cho and the Indian engage their first battle, but now one of them is back with a silly rolling of conveniently placed barrels which knocks Cho over. So, a pretty lame action scene so far with a few unusual details, and the best bit being the fight with the Indian. Now things start to get a lot more wild. Van smashing through rubbish for dramatic effect as Cho grabs on, but gets kicked off with an effective little fall and tumble stunt. Angry Cho gives chase and does some Power Rangers style big jumps. It looks very silly and unrealistic, but it's good because we didn't expect it and the music carries the moment through dramatically with a nice punctuating drum roll. The editing of that second jump is surprisingly good as well. I'm not sure if the landing on the car was actually a backward flip from the car that was reversed in the edit. If it wasn't reversed, then that's top marks to the stuntman who landed so gracefully. Fortunately for Cho, the guys in the van did a stupid U-turn and came back on themselves, so now he can do something else unexpected. And note the pacing here.
Hey, look! Move it!
This stuff all happens so fast that a series of unbelievable continuity errors fly right over our heads. First, look at the backgrounds. The buildings completely change between similar angled shots. And second, Tonto is in the passenger seat, but for the rest of the scene he's the driver. It's amazing what mistakes a movie can get away with if the pacing is tight enough. Actually, if you take a good look at the shot, it seems that what's been done here is the shot has been flipped horizontally in the edit, so the Indian guy now appears on the wrong side of the van. They must have tried it with the correct orientation of the shot, but it didn't work, so they flipped it. Big dramatic shift in music once he's on the van, because these guys now know they're up against a seriously formidable opponent.
Hey, look! Move it!
Actually, this whole piece of music from the moment he hit the ground here until the very end of the scene is some of the best action scene music I've ever heard. It may be electronic, but it's intense. It's way above the quality of music normally associated to such a low budget film. Good unnerving stunt of Cho nearly falling off the van. As is usually the case with these kinds of shots on moving vehicles, this van is actually moving quite slowly, but thanks to fast editing and fast music we don't get to notice it properly. And the slow movement is compensated for in two follow-up shots. The camera near the ground, which always makes a chase scene look faster than it actually is. That's used a lot in the early Mad Max films, you know, the ones with real stunts. And then we have a switch to slow motion for this brilliant stunt, accompanied by a really good musical crescendo. The slow motion both dramatically punctuates the moments and hides the slow speed of the vehicle. It's a great stunt because it's so unexpected, and I can't recall any other action movie where a character does this. Actually, the van prop appears to have been chosen based on the roof railing that facilitates these moments. The way the window smashes isn't like what we'd expect from the kind of glass that's actually used in vehicle windows, but again, it's the rapid pacing and effective music that carry the moment through very nicely. So now a switch to awkward confined fighting in the van. No room for fancy moves here, so this is an unusual scenario for a martial arts film. And the music is continuing to escalate and escalate throughout all of this. I'll just a little sort of stop for a moment here. I want to mention that an important thing that's been going on all through this fight so far is that the protagonist actually appears to be desperately struggling against his enemies. He's racking up minor injuries and he actually feels pain. He's not overconfident in his body language like in those films where the good guy keeps posing and just has a robotic straight face all the time and barely even appears to struggle for breath. The sense of struggle and actual physical injury for the protagonist is really important if an action scene is going to be dramatic and tense. It's one of the key things that makes the action in Raiders of the Lost Ark and the early Mad Max movies so effective. It conveys genuine danger, because without danger an action scene basically is the equivalent of an acrobatic ballerina display. Cho may have committed an acrobatic display or two so far, but he has a few cuts to show for it. Something else this scene, for all its faults, is getting right is that the action is frequently chaotic and disorganised. When the protagonist is constantly engaged in precision moves, it tends to feel over-choreographed and pre-planned. Real-life fights are chaotic and disorganised generally, so it's good to have some of that in a movie fight scene as well. Okay, on with the scene. Additional sense of danger with this door smash and lots of papers being whipped up by the passing van, that gives it some visual dynamism, and a good sinister punctuation in the music.
Holy shit!
Denim Guy gets kicked out of the now very slow moving van. It's still an awkward stunt to just fall onto moving tarmac like that. And now some van crashing stuff and A-Team styled slow motion hitting of a fire hydrant, and at last a full stop crash. Cho, the Indian, and the fat guy fly out the window, likely onto some off-screen mattresses. The blazing sun is on screen here for the first time in the scene, punctuating the crash moment. And again, note the rapid pacing as this fight continues. They could have gotten away here with having these guys all take about 20 seconds or so to struggle to their feet before carrying on the fight, but that would break the frenetic pace. Instead, as they fly out the window, Mustache Guy has superhumanly already made it out of the back of the van and is running over the car to get to Cho and keep the fight going. Relentless pacing is crucial to this whole scene. Mustache Guy could have landed feet first on Cho's back here and possibly broke his back and really damaged him. So, bad move from him there. And amazingly, no one has any broken bones or concussion from being thrown several meters onto tarmac. Now what do you do if three guys run at you at once? Jump up and divide all four limbs between them. Actually, I did see a real fight once many years ago between three men in which the guy who was on his own simultaneously punched his two enemies, one with each hand at the same time, but I've never seen it happen since, so it can be done. Anyway, it looks pretty good here with one guy spitting blood out. Also note the change in weather. We've shifted from cloudy skies, which was there for the first half of this fight scene, and we've now shifted straight to clear skies. And there's the sun, which is now close to setting. It gives an orange light tinge and long shadows. That's not realistic because they haven't been fighting for several hours to justify the weather change and change of time of day, but the suggestion that night is coming soon gives a kind of subliminal dramatic feel to this part of the fight. Actually, come to think of it, I think this whole scene probably would have been better if it had been a nighttime fight scene, but then the budget would require night shoots with excessive lighting and all the rest of it. So now Indian guy pulls out 2 axes which weren't in his belt at the start of the scene, but they were when he flew out the van. That makes him equivalent to ninjas actually, because in these movies ninjas tend to have an arsenal of weapons somehow hidden in their clothing. And Revenge of the Ninja takes that materialising weaponry and equipment feature to a very unique extreme in its end battle. If you haven't seen the film, go check it out just for that alone. It's hilarious and it's genius. And like with ninja weapons, these axes have a historical cultural association for Tonto. Cho takes a nasty slice to the chest, maintaining and increasing the sense of sadistic danger posed by the main enemy. Continuity error now as they fight. Fatty fell off screen in one direction here and he's now in the wrong place. Just a mention of sound effects here again. The sounds of the axe swings and slicing here are pretty convincing. No over-the-top whistling noises like we often get in martial arts movies. Now remember Bruce Lee used to do a lot of screaming at his enemies in fights to unnerve them? Well, Cho kinda does it too, but with less exaggeration. It's kind of like a form of dialogue that can be used in action scenes. It conveys defiance and rage, and it adds to that important sense of struggle in a fight. Actually, Cho doesn't say a single word in this whole action scene. So now Cho is going to take charge and kick this Indian guy's arse. And it's a brief but great piece of choreography involving 3 spins of the characters. Arm twist, roundhouse axe swing, countered by roundhouse kick to a now very exposed Indian guy's face. I've never seen that sequence of moves in a martial arts movie before. It's pretty good. When I've seen this fight with other viewers, that kick moment tends to get an enthusiastic little cheer and laughter of approval sometimes. And the editors knew they were onto a winner because they used this very moment to prompt a major shift in music. The revealing of the axes changed the music in itself to one of almost horror music anticipation, and then that kick changes the music into the hero is winning now coolery. So Cho is now kicking arse definitely, and while the fighting isn't as fast paced as in say the Raid films, which are also some of my favourite martial arts movies but for very different reasons, the choreography here has its good little moments. I've not seen this one done before in a martial arts movie. I like that because not only is it unusual and unexpected, but that would actually work. You could do some serious damage to someone in that way. As far as I know, Sho Kosugi did some of the choreography for this movie himself, so maybe these kinds of ideas were his. It's also important that this scene isn't repeating itself much. The action is varied in terms of choreography and locations, and considering this fight has occurred across several streets and involving car crashes, well, where are the cops? So, Cho has now done some nifty moves on Indian guy and moustache guy, so now time for something of basic simplicity and comedic value. Hey, isn't that one of the barrels from the start of the scene? Now Indian guy is back for one last swing before Cho uses another couple of spinning around him manoeuvres to disarm him and then break his neck. Again, this is a nice sequence of moves that I've not seen in any other martial arts movie. There seems to be a good emphasis on trying to find new choreography ideas here. Note the use of smoke from the crashed car to try and add a little bit of dramatic aesthetic to all of this as well, although they didn't make use of the water jet from the nearby fire hydrant to add some visual dynamism. Remember they did that in the ending of, Lethal Weapon? And it was pretty good there. So with Indian Guy and Fatty out of the way, Cho can finally get that annoying moustache guy over and done with. And this guy's pain is conveyed not through loud screams of agony, which tends to disturb audiences, but through the guy shaking in pain. And for some reason that's more palatable to viewers. Quite nasty actually. Break his arm and then use the broken arm to throw him over again. Fucking ouch. And just as Cho finishes him off, the pacing thing is here again. Denim Guy, who was kicked out of the van, is back and grabs a gun from the glove compartment, a gun which the dumb burglars never thought to have with them during the actual robbery, and never thought to use when Cho was in the van. But the frenetic pacing doesn't give us time to think about that, because no sooner has Cho kicked Moustache Guy out of the way, and he's already in the line of gunfire. This scene isn't giving him or us a breather. And now yet another great idea which I've hardly ever seen done in an action movie. If you're in the line of fire from about 10 feet away, with nowhere to run and nothing to hide behind, then just tumble rapidly back and forth so the guy can't get a good aim. I wonder how hard it would actually be to shoot someone with a revolver if they're moving like that. Maybe that tumbler mover would actually work. The music gives one last dramatic danger drone upon showing us the gun, and then the music stops and allows the gunfire to effectively become the music. Comically bad dubbing of the guy laughing, and that's an important point. Remember I said that this scene is all about fighting back against bullying and humiliation of the school playground nature? Well, there you have it. Would this guy really be laughing when his 3 buddies have just been killed? No, but that school playground taunting thing is at work, so it kind of fits. A couple of nice camera shots for the last 2 bullets, with Cho's dodging abilities again nudging slightly towards superhuman. But at the same time, his moves here might actually work in real life. A rapid drop to the floor followed by a side roll would certainly make anyone hard to shoot. And yet we hardly ever see this happen in movies. And that's pretty good because it suggests that ninja skills have an element of logical sense and are not just based on magical precision and leaping power. Right, so the scene is all finished. Oh, wait, fuck me, he's still giving chase. Music kicks back in. And this is a great ending to the scene because it really ramps up that sense of struggle that I was talking about that sets this scene apart from most martial arts fight scenes, apart from most action scenes actually. For only the second time in the entire fight we have a close-up of Cho's eyes. This time he has blood in them and is virtually crying with physical pain and strain. How many heroes are shown tearful during the fight? It hardly ever happens. Extreme close-up of his hand, and there's blood on the nails as well, adding to the grit. The whole motive of preventing the dolls from being stolen is forgotten here. Surely those dolls would be insured anyway. Who'd risk a life like this for all those dolls? But now the aim appears to be to catch and defeat the last enemy who tried to humiliate him. Wide-angle lens point of view shots intensify the sense of being there and feeling the struggle. Good low angles to convey more speed than there actually is. Very good stunt work here too. I'm not sure how they did this without actually scraping the hell out of the stunt actor. Must have put some padding on his legs or something to prevent injury. And the sight and sound of the door scraping on the tarmac really helps convey the pain of being dragged. And all assisted by that frenetic music too. The driver though is too dazed and confused to know what he's doing, so one last crash and the whole chase comes to an end. Again, good stunts, or at least it appears to be. But actually if you slow it down it becomes quite obvious that there was a dummy of Cho at the moment of impact. but the rapid edit makes it look very convincing. You get that feeling of, oh shit, I hope he's alright, which I never really feel that with CGI. And finish with close-up of Cho, cut, scraped, bruised and no doubt exhausted, but he has that crucially important set of cinematically effective eyes. He's the Charles Bronson of ninja films, basically. So, a big, varied fight scene that is narratively silly, has comical looking bad guys and starts off with poorly conceived choreography, but through a series of location changes and shifts in the kind of fighting, the fight turns into quite an inspired and gripping sequence. The scene is a great demonstration that realism and logical plausibility are often best being abandoned if the aim is purely to entertain and engage an audience, and that continuity errors and leaps of logic can be masked over with frenetic pacing and brutal violence that doesn't give the viewer time to think too much about what's happening. It's also a demonstration that action scenes tend to be much more engaging when the hero doesn't have casual invincibility and non-stop precision of movement, but instead he actually struggles and gets hurt throughout the scene. To that effect, the rough and tumble chaos combined with lots of minor injuries is crucial. Actually, this fight scene conveys a level of protagonist physical struggle that I've very rarely seen in an action movie, and I think it's probably the key element that makes the scene effective and memorable. Thanks for watching. You've been listening to Rob Ager. There's more film analysis of mine here on YouTube and at my site collativelearning.com, where you can get access to dozens of hours worth of my offline content in the form of digital downloads. In fact, just a week ago I put a 2-hour plus analysis of James Cameron's The Abyss on sale. You might want to check that one out. And if you enjoyed this particular video and you're a martial arts fan, then you might also enjoy my scene analysis of the dojo fight in Bruce Lee's Fist of Fury. That's another of my favourite martial arts flicks. Bye for now, folks.